Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Hello, Trace. Coming up on the fastest UCF show around. Is UCF over fans maybe underestimating the Big 12 opener against TCU? Plus, you got NIL money. The playoffs are expanding in college football. Is that good or bad? We'll break that down with Trace here before he bolts for another PTO assignment coming up on the fastest.
Oh, you too. You're jumping on me too about this PTO. Before we get going with all that, let's welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock, keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Gents, good evening. We're recording this on a night where there are two championships that can be won, but I want you both to know you're always champions in my eyes.
Sweet talking. All right. We'll check back with Adam in just a bit. Elo, I stole this first topic from Paul Feinbaum, noted college football commentator, who asked on his social media, what is the biggest concern you have for your favorite college football team heading into 2024? Made me think, what about you? What are you most concerned about regarding the Knights this fall?
Well, first, I'm concerned that you're looking to Paul Feinbaum for inspiration on content. That's
the end of
June. But I will say what I am concerned about. That's the defensive side of the ball. Are they good enough? Have they improved enough? We don't know any of this. And I think we're making some people are making kind of conclusions based on who they've acquired and who they've gotten added to the roster. But the fact of the matter is they haven't played anybody else. And this defense wasn't good enough last year. Is it good enough this year to be relevant for the whole season? That's what I'm concerned about. What if they still are not very good, Trace? What if they are still going to get beat around the line of scrimmage? Then how is this team going to be successful or even a factor in the Big 12 or have a successful season?
Well, to dovetail from that is we just don't know what UCF is getting from the transfers, right? And we forget other teams go into the portal too and address their weaknesses and upgrade positions or hope to. UCF doesn't know what it's getting from its portal class, right? And you go back a year and they had high hopes for all of those players, and it was a mixed bag. I would also say that you don't entirely know that you have depth that is needed to get you through rough patches, right? The heralded arrival of KJ Jefferson, but should he miss some time for any reason, then what do you have at quarterback?
Well, these coaching changes, defense on the staffs, especially on the defensive side of the ball with Ted Roof coming in, is it going to work? Is it going to work? And it's a bit of a transition to some extent. I do think there's more questions than answers, which is probably why the national media is not really buying into UCF, whereas maybe some in the local media is buying it and thinking they're a lot better than and could be contender. That's what's so fascinating about college football is there is no preseason games that we're going to get to see. We're going to find out. Well, I would argue New Hampshire is a preseason scrimmage, but we're not going to know real answers until they play get games under their belts in September.
Well, we don't know if this team will perform better on the road and what it has learned in its second season, going into its second season in the Big 12, right? A transitional year. And you remember a year ago, head coach Gus Malon saying that they were practicing those late game situations that they needed to win those close games at the end. And certainly they won on the road at Cincinnati, beat Boise State at the end. But there were other notable losses that were close games. Do they turn the tide on those and go from 6 wins to 7, 8, or 9?
Again, though, it's got to start defensively. It's got to start in the front seven to stop the run. Because as Gus Malzahn told Orlando Sentinel's Matt Murschel, he was kind of surprised that the Big 12 was more of a running league than a passing league, which was what he anticipated going to league. Matt Murschel, while Trace was on vacation and just taking time off,
I've noticed the theme in the first 5 minutes of the show.
Matt Murschel was working. He spoke to Gus Malzahn. He spoke to Terry Bahadra and Johnny Dawkins for interviews during the Orlando Sentinel. I had a chance recently to catch up with Matt Murschel about those 3 interviews. Trace, what stood out to you about all those interviews with 3 of the most important people in UCF right now, in Gus Malzahn, Johnny Dawkins, and Terry Bahadra, what they had to say to Matt Murschel?
Well, let's go back to that point. Gus was surprised that teams ran the ball. He hadn't heard of Ollie Gordon of Oklahoma State, which they did a good job of bottling up, certainly in that game. But that, I think, does speak to the transition that goes on from moving from the American to the Big 12. But it does surprise me, Elo, that there was some surprise on the part of Gus Malzahn. I also thought it was interesting what Matt Rochelle spoke to Terry Modger, who not doing as many media availabilities as he used to, right? The changing landscape of college football and what they are most focused on. He's crowing about the scheduling that he's done that's got him out a little bit more now than when he first arrived. But I think it's interesting how that job keeps changing for him as the revenue streams change across the college football landscape.
Well said on the Terry part. I think the other couple of things that kind of stood out to me, how Gus kind of explaining to Matt why he takes back the play calling. He didn't feel it was his team without him kind of doing the play calling, kind of admitting he knew he needed to make some changes during the season. That was fascinating to me from that standpoint. I think it also what stood out to me too is, again, Terry Mohajir acknowledging that basketball has not had the financial resource backing in the past for basketball. And I think he brought that in. It was interesting that he shared that with Matt Rochelle, as well as the issues they had with women's basketball on the court. So I thought Matt did a great job. Trace, if you didn't take so much time off, maybe you get some of these.
I think, are we counting these, Adam? I think that's 3 references in 6 minutes. We talked briefly earlier about is UCF underestimating its first road game against TCU. To listen to this fan base, all eyes are pointing to that game in Gainesville in October, and overlooking, I think, a tough road opponent at TCU, not to mention hosting Colorado, which, of course, is the, much ballyhooed talk of the Big 12 across the national media. What about you? I'm on record as saying I think UCF goes into that TCU game. They certainly can win it, but I think they go on the road as an underdog in Fort Worth, Texas for that first Big 12 road game.
Well, TCU is coming off a tough year there. We wonder, can they bounce back? I think there's kind of an uncertainty about TCU. You're right. That's kind of the quiet game. Everybody's focused on Colorado home game. They're focused on the Florida road game. But here's the thing, Trace. I don't know if UCF fans are underestimating TCU. First of all, I think they're going to have a good representation. Fort Worth could be a lot worse places to travel. It's one of the better traveling places.
Easier, flying to Dallas.
So I think you'll have a good turnout. The question is, here's the thing I think many people is if you can't beat TCU in the Big 12 opener, then odds are you're not going to be a factor in the Big 12 race. So I think that's kind of the mindset. Maybe for TCU fans, they feel the same way. If they can't beat UCF, they're not going to be a serious contender in the Big 12. So I think it's an important, it's a statement game for the winner of that game to say, hey, we're going to be a factor in the Big 12, whereas the losers, you're digging yourself potentially a hole here.
Is that perception on the part of the fans? Or are you saying that it's a bit of a knockout game for being a Big 12 conference tournament contender, a conference championship game contender?
You can't say it's a knockout because I think this conference may end up beating each other up. But when you consider the schedule, I think it's important for UCF to get off to a good start here. You got Colorado, who I think will be much more improved. Arizona, Utah, you get them at home, but they're going to be top teams there. You wonder psychologically if they lose to TCU, you're going to hear, "Oh, here we go again." Are we we dig yourself a hole. Look at what happened with the Baylor game last year and how psychologically it kind of went free falling from that point on. Not saying that's going to happen if you lose to TCU, but it certainly doesn't get you off to a good start, Trace.
You mentioned preseason games, opening with New Hampshire, Sam Houston State. How much did they learn? I don't know that you learn enough that gives you a great deal of confidence going on the road, which UCF has had struggles, right? And it's going to be a tough atmosphere. If you look at this schedule, right, besides those first 2 games, the other 10, are you telling me they can't go either way? They're going to be a couple of point games either way on paper.
But that's life in the power conference. Get used to it. This ain't the American anymore where you could pick on, the bottom teams in the league and secure yourself some wins. I think those days are over. So welcome to the big times. This is what everybody wanted, and this is what you're going to get. And we're going to find out if UCF is a middle-of-the-pack Big 12, a Big 12 contender, or a team that's a pretender. So we'll see. It's tough. You know what's tough? Bowl games. Good luck getting people interested in bowl games. One way to do it, perhaps, is using NIL contracts. Is that right around the corner, Trace? Are we going to see contracts now to encourage players to play in bowl games?
I think so. I think that keeps the bowl system alive, right? So I think it's just a natural extension of where this is going. And I still think, though, what will be interesting, right? You've seen your higher touted players that are looking ahead to the NFL draft. Is that a provision that they want to ink, right? If they want to opt out of that military bowl or the Gasparilla Bowl and not risk injury or some setback, how do they negotiate that contract that has that NIL provision to play in the bowl game?
Here's the other thing with the expanded playoff going to 12 teams. Who's going to be excited to play in a bowl game? Like, are we really going to care? Like, I guess bowl games will be desperate enough to put in that money to try to save their bowl game. But if I'm a player or a coach, do I really care if certain players skip the bowl game? And, I don't really see how this works, Trace. I really do. I think this is a defeat, irrelevant point. I don't think it's going to work. I think the bowl game's days are numbered.
Even as they expand the ranks of them, there are more bowl games than ever. And now they've moved bowl games into what used to be a sacred day for Army Navy. Bowl games not going up against the Army Navy game, but it will be a day with bowl games. But hey, the TV ratings, which you study, bear out that there is room for these bowl games. Even the lowest of them draw 1-2 million fans that are watching, right? Viewers that are watching. So there's a place for the bowl games. I think that the money will entice some, but I think your higher profile players are still going to consider the quality of the game and whether they want to play and risk injury.
Well, and I wonder what the interest will be because the mindset's different. It used to be when it was only a 2-team or a 4-team playoff, however you want to describe it. Hey, you had more interest in bowl games, but now with 12 teams, do you really believe people are going to be like, hey, I got to go see that New Mexico Bowl. I can't wait to watch it. Come on, give me a break.
Well, all of this, of course, considered in the talk of whether NCAA athletes should be considered employees. The NCAA supporting Dartmouth in its legal suit against students being considered employees. Let me present it to you this way, Elo, right? Staff meetings, mandatory schedules, travel to events. Are they not employees? I mean, this notion that they're also taking classes. Have you seen some of the majors and some of the rosters across sports? What is the first priority for many of these athletes? Is it an education? Why aren't they going to be considered employees? There was an attempt a couple of years ago to unionize. I think all of this is heading there. You're talking about contracts, representation. Why are they not employees if they have mandatory meetings to attend and work schedules to adhere to and dress codes to adhere to? And why are they not employees?
I think it's people are in denial. I think it's going to happen. Maybe it's not in those official terms, but it's going to happen. The academic side has taken a backseat. I mean, in softball, we have the best player in the sport leaving Stanford to go to a lesser, academic school just to get more money in the NIL. This is coming. So one of two things are going to happen. Either you're going to sign deals with these and make an arrangement with these athletes to stick around and make some income out of it, or we're going to have the Wild Wild West every year, and you're not going to recognize any rosters anytime soon, and everybody's on a one-year deal, and they're playing for 2, 3 teams, 4 teams maybe throughout their career. We have total chaos. Either way, something's going to happen, something's going to give, and I think the way to do it is you keep them around, whether that is an employee, quote-unquote, or not. Maybe they're an independent contractor, but you got to keep – I think they're going to be a deal done.
And then the healthcare benefits and the 401k plans and everything that comes with it. And you've got players like Dylan Gabriel been playing college football for how many years now? Elo, put him on the payroll already. Let him just be Oregon's quarterback for years to come. All right, let us bring back in Adam. And time for some silliness.
Greetings, gents. Before I get to Silly Game, I have an exciting announcement. We here at the Sons of UCF and around the kingdom have a new sponsor. We're proud to be working with the Orlando Sports Foundation, who puts on the Cure Bowl every year. And so you're going to want to join them. And one of the bowl games people want to go to, Elo, is going to be this one, by the way. You're going to
3 minutes ago, Elo trashed
this
the entire bowl system.
This is the one you're going to want to go to Friday, December 20th for the Staff DNA Cure Bowl at Camping World Stadium. It's going to be a fun-filled day of football. All will help raise funds and awareness for cancer research. It's one of the top-rated bowl games every year, and you don't want to miss out on the entertaining pregame festivities, exciting action on the field. At the Cure Bowl, the matchup is always Orlando versus cancer. So join the home team. Get your tickets today at curebowl.com. Thank you to Orlando Sports Foundation and the Cure Bowl for supporting us around here at the Sons of UCF and around the kingdom. This week's silly game. All right, I have to trace proof these games now because of his tendencies. So we're going to play a game. I'm going to give you tendencies. At least I didn't say PTO. That's 4. All right, I'm going to give you a statement. And you're going to tell me how confident you are in this statement between a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being most confident, 1 being least confident. I can't do odd numbers because Trace will sit in the middle. So I got to go even numbers here. 1 to 4, 4 most confident, 1 least confident. All right. So Elo, I'll start with you. We'll start with basketball first. Your confidence level in Johnny Dawkins working out his full new contract. How confident are you that Johnny Dawkins works out that full contract? 4 most confident, 1 least confident, or somewhere in between?
When you say full contract, are you talking about even like the last year of his deal? Or are we talking?
Yep.
It's only a couple of years.
Up until the final day on that contract, Elo.
I'm going to go 3.
Trace, how confident are you?
Not very confident. 2.
Do you think it's at his choice or UCF's choice?
UCF's choice.
Ooh, all right.
Wow.
Let's stick with basketball again. Next one again. Same drill here. Trace, how confident are you that this year's men's hoops team can make the NCAA tournament?
Not very confident. Because I don't know what all of these new players are going to come together and how they're going to perform. On paper, they look good. 2, put a 2 on that, because I think if that isn't a 3 or a 4, it could affect the first questions. So 2 on that.
I'm going to say 1, and this is why. You're still playing in the best conference in college basketball. Can you crack the top 10 in the conference? It sounds like, top 10. That is hard enough. And you got to crack the top 10 just to have a shot at making the NCAA tournament. I mean, I think they'll have a pretty good year. But I don't know if it's NCAA. I'm still skeptical. This is the hardest league to crack if you're UCF basketball.
And they could be better, a lot better. And
yeah,
still, look who you're adding, Arizona.
That's the problem. You got 20 games. You're adding Arizona as a powerhouse. They're going to be a national title contender. You got Colorado's a tournament team. You could be good and finish 11th and not make the NCAA tournament.
All right, let's switch over to football. Elo, this first one is for you. How confident are you that KJ Jefferson will start every game this season?
Oh, man. Ooh. Oh, that's a tucker. Because I want to say 4 really badly, but I know what you're thinking. The last few years, you're usually banged up for a game or 2. But I'm going to be the optimist on this show. I'm going to go 4. The guy's big. He's tough to get a hold of. I think he battles through some injuries. I think he plays every game.
When's the last year a UCF quarterback started the entire season, Elo? I go 3. I'm pretty confident, but I'm not going to go 4.
2020 would be that year, Trace. All right, here's this one for you, Trace. I'll start with you on this. How confident are you UCF wins in the Swamp this season?
2.
2.
Not very confident.
I would have said 4 if this game was a day game. I think the fact that it's a night game actually helps Florida. So I'm going to drop it down to a 3 because I've been there to the Swamp. It's an electric atmosphere, tough place to play at night especially. But I'm going to go 3. UCF should be the better team, Trace. None of this, like, you're trying to act like this game is a preseason game, that it doesn't matter. It matters a lot. And in fact,
it will matter to the Gators and 90,000 of their fans in a rough, hostile road environment. UCF hasn't proven it can win meaningful road games.
Listen, I think half the Gator fans might root for UCF just to get Billy Napier out of there. I think actually it could be a very favorable difference. I'm going to go 3.
That's fair.
The Napier buyout game.
Elo, for you first, how confident are you that UCF will have the Big 12 offensive player on its roster this season?
Offensive player of the year, you mean?
Yes.
Ooh. I will say 1. I still think there's more talent. Think of the Arizona quarterback if Cam Rising's healthy for Utah, Ollie Gordon. No, I would go 1.
1 on that. Not very confident.
All right, last one really quickly. Trace, with you. UCF will be in the Big 12 title game this season. How confident are you?
1.
2. I think it's a favorable schedule.
The optimist.
Home games. You can sneak in there on the back door if everybody beats each other out. 2, though. Say 2.
I like how 2 is optimism. Thanks, gents. Always fun.
Yeah, 2 it is. All right. Expectations Adam talked about the men's basketball. How confident are we about making the NCAA tournament? On Thursday, Sun's live show, Trace, which you were not a part of.
There we go. Ding, you get another one.
Ben Hazel was a guest. You missed out on good old Ben, who says that maybe fans should be kind of temper down the expectations a little bit.
He has an extremely uphill battle to climb. I think fans need to really, level set their expectations. I know Instagram and all of that stuff is great at, bolstering people's status. But I do know the guys, like if I'm a college guy like a Darius and, you're grown, you're older, we're playing for NIL money now. No Instagram followers come with you into practice and open gym. So it's going to be about the work and what he shows. I think he's an extremely talented kid. But I do think, there's going to be some growing pains there.
I missed the
soundbite of the year, Elo. No Instagram followers are going to practice.
I missed the bow tie. Do you agree with him, though, to temper the expectations on Mikey Williams?
Yes. He's got to prove a lot of things on the court. And as Ben mentioned, there are a lot of other guys that want playing time. And that's going to be the challenge for Johnny Dawkins. Could be a talented team on paper, a lot of impressive transfers, but you got to mold that together and make a team. And you remember the old George O'Leary line about me guys. We're going to find out whether Mikey Williams is a me guy or a team guy. And that's going to be a challenge for Johnny Dawkins in this roster.
Well, and I think that's why overall you got to temper expectations. We don't know exactly what you have. This is life in college basketball, so it's not like UCF's the only one to deal with this. But we don't know. Does this team fit? Does it not fit? Remember a few years back when you had Darius, Perry, and you had, Brandon Mayhem. Oh, yeah, they got good attitude, but they didn't really fit. They're inconsistent. Is this team going to be consistent enough to contend? I give them credit. They're going to play A&M. They're going to play a Big 12. They're going to get their opportunity. But I agree. I think you got to temper it. I believe anything to do with UCF men's basketball, you have to temper expectations. We're not a blue blood, Trace. Why are we acting like we are?
Well, under the radar a little bit have been the coaching changes that Johnny Dawkins has made and what impact those coaches have. We know what he's going to stress in terms of defense, but can they show us more on offense? That's a question, right? I mean, Ben, I think in that interview mentioned he'd like to see, move away from the 63-58 kind of games and a greater margin. Can UCF put more points up while maintaining what has, pretty much been a good defense through the years with Johnny Dawkins?
Yeah, it's hard to change who you are, though. And I think Johnny's always going to be a defensive guy first here. We'll see if they have more flash offensively, but we'll see. It's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's why to me, you just kind of take a wait and see approach. I certainly wouldn't put any a guy that barely has played or hasn't played like Mikey Williams. You just don't know what you have.
All right. We talked about, you just said UCF might need to make that top 10 in the league, in 16-team league, 20-game schedule in order to make an NCAA tournament. Maybe we should be for the NCAA expanding the tournament, Elo. They're talking about models of 4 to 8. Maybe add some more entry points, and certainly a conference like the Big 12 be more akin to getting, teams in that than maybe some of your other leagues.
Sure, let's just water down every postseason. We're doing this with every sport. So
but is it really watering it down when you consider the percentage? There's 340 schools that play 1A basketball, right? Is it really watering it down? There's a smaller percentage to go postseason in basketball than in other sports.
But at the rate we're going, then why bother? Is there a reason to follow the regular season at this point? Like, you could just
no, probably not. It all comes down to the tournament.
Look, I think it's going to happen eventually. The question is when, not if. Does it happen in the next couple of years? Do they wait till the TV deal is up in 2032? Matt Norlander of CBS Sports wrote about this. The NCAA will lose money if they do this because remember, if the men expand, the women's tournament has to expand, and that's not a money generator at all. So
not more now than it used to be.
No,
with the record ratings outdrawing the men's game. Maybe there is potential in the long run to make more money off of the women's tournament.
Maybe down the road, but again, nobody's watching the first 2 rounds in the women's tournament. Okay, that's the difference. They're only picking up later in the tournament. I don't think it's good for the tournament. However, this is good for UCF because the more teams are in, this is all just to help the power conferences. And if Brett Yormark's been outspoken about it, this could help the Big 12 go from maybe a 7-8 bid league to a 9 to 11 bid league. So I actually do think this is positive for UCF but not necessarily positive for the sport. But you don't care about the sport, Trace, right? You're not a the little guy. You never were, have you? That was all a facade.
That's old Trace. Pre-around the kingdom.
Wow, different Traces. We're learning a lot. Different personalities here. Oh, my goodness. So we'll see what happens. All right, so let's talk men's hoops. This big show here this past year, Trace. What is the biggest success for UCF men's basketball in last season? Was it a successful season in your eyes?
Successful season. We've been grading the sports week after week as we look back on the 23-24 first year in the Big 12 and for men's soccer, the Sun Belt. I think it was a successful year. Now, I don't like the way they lost to South Florida in the NIT, but I'll never forget wins at Texas, the home win over Kansas. I would have never, ever in my entire life imagined that. Solid B rating for men's basketball. And I'm encouraged by a greater commitment by Terry Mohajir and by the fan base, the booster base, to move UCF up to being more competitive in men's basketball because it is a premier sport for the Big 12.
I agree about a B. It was an amazing year on all fronts. I thought on the court it was a great product. Got to see some great games. The Kansas game is something that nobody will ever forget if you were in attendance or whether you watched it. Big success on as far as revenue with 6 season tickets records and ticket sales and attendance. That was huge. I think more eyeballs was on UCF men's basketball than any time before. I think it was all positive. Strong B. I'll never forget the Kansas win, though. That was, I think, you can make the argument that's on a Mount Rushmore of UCF sporting events on campus is that UCF Kansas game. I think that's a strong argument for that.
7-11 in league before the conference tournament,
Sure.
Elo. 20-game schedule next season. 10-10 get you into that top 10?
Well, historically, now it'll be interesting with an expanded Big 12, but historically, if you get 500 in the Big 12, you usually make the NCAA tournament. So that is a good barometer, probably the number you got to hit to make the tournament. Not to say that you can't make it if you're 9-11, which would actually be another benchmark. I would say 9-11, 10-10 would be a good mark. 8-12 and worse. Now it depends on what you do, non-conference, etc.
Then you need conference tournament wins and the postseason tournament. Yeah. Let's switch to women's basketball. 3-15 in league and the regular season, a 7-game losing streak, 12-17 overall. Rocky year. We underestimate the strength of women's basketball for the Big 12. Certainly amongst your major sports on campus fan attending sports, worst season of any sport in the transition to the Big 12.
Definitely the biggest struggle of them all by far. And I think that's clearly leaves a lot of questions of how, if they'll be competitive in the Big 12. 3 wins. Ironically, don't you think, Trace, they had the season that a lot of people thought the men would have going into last year, right? You were constant jokes. Oh, they're going to win 2, 3. Remember, we made a prop bet. Oh, man, if they win 4 games, that would be amazing with the men. So the women actually had a bigger struggle than the men did. I don't know if people anticipated that.
Well, 3-15, right? A couple more wins with some better recruiting. It's not a make or break season for Coach Messer, but you got to show improvement in a very competitive Big 12. Got to say F on women's basketball. How can you give them anything better at 3-15 in the league?
Yeah, that's one of those where you go to like study hall and study up and hope to do better in the next semester and retake the course.
All right, time to bring back in Adam for some corrections, some knowledge.
All right, gents, you guys are talking about what to be concerned about for UCF. Last year, 83 in total defense, 128th in rushing yards. If you think help's on the way, by the way, Ted Roof at Oklahoma, they were 79 in total defense, 50 in rushing yards. So maybe some help there. Talked about TCU. They were 5-7 last year, obviously coming off of a 2022 season that saw them in the championship game. They're breaking in a new quarterback, though, Josh Hoover. But fun fact about TCU, from 2019 to 2023, if you throw out that 2022 season, they have at least 3 losses at home. So Perhaps they are gettable on the home route. Talk about Mikey Williams, a former 4-star recruit. As of today, has 3.4 million Instagram followers. If you brought all those folks to the gym, Tracy, would be awful crowded in there. And I want to just point out for a second, if I told you all that a team that wins 17-16 and 7-11 in conference would have gotten a B record overall, I think a lot of people would have thought I'm crazy. But welcome new coaches, by the way. Tracy mentioned this: Tyson Waterman, Adam Hood, and Carlos Dotson to UCF men's basketball.
All right. Thank you, Adam. One more thing, Elo, before we go. I'm on the strangest mailing list for some different organizations. BetKansas.com emailed me today. They announced they've created a scoring system that judges tailgating, and they based it on food, beverages, atmosphere, fans, team records to rank the top 10 in the Big 12. And the top 10 includes UCF at number 7, Elo, in tailgating experience, being Colorado at 6, TCU at 5th, Oklahoma State 4th, Kansas 3rd, Utah 2nd, and Arizona State, where UCF travels this fall, tops there in Arizona State. So UCF 7th at tailgating. Step up your game, Knights fans, this fall. I'm on the mailing list, Elo, for Bet Kansas.
How do you end up at Bet Kansas? I guess you've been in Kansas that much?
Maybe so. Look for new episodes midweek every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Drops later into the audio feed wherever you get your downloadable content. For Adam Eaton and Eric Lopez, I'm Trylko. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching this week's Around the Kingdom.